Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Headline here at Fox News, my friends. FBI disrupts alleged explosive drone plot targeting White House UFC event, officials say. I wonder if the radicals on the left would have cheered if this terror attack actually took place. We'll talk about this. We'll talk a little bit about the hatred and the anger and the rage and the arrogance. The amount of disdain the left has for things like UFC at the White House, on the White House property, is something that is candidly foreign to me. I've seen some things on social media, things from people that I know or have known throughout my life, some folks that I knew a long time ago, and just, it is so foreign to me. What happened? What has happened to masculinity? What is the big problem here? Especially when you compare it to things that were done on the White House grounds, even in the last administration. I want to talk about these things today, my friends. Welcome to the program. If you want to share your thoughts, ask your questions, I invite you to do that. You can text those, 317-785-1030, 317-785-1030, or you can email those, Todd at toddhuffshow.com, my friends. Think about this. Our investments are like seeds that we plant. They grow, they multiply, but are they bearing the kind of fruit that we want? At 48 Financial, they believe your money should reflect your values. They specialize in wealth management and biblically responsible investing, screening out companies that do not align with your faith. It's all part of their purpose-centered financial planning, helping you live a life of meaning and purpose. If you want to see if your current investments, or to what degree your current investments actually align with your values, it's easy to do. All you have to do is go to 48financial.com/Todd. Again, that's 48financial.com/Todd. Take a quick and easy assessment, and they'll tell you to what degree your investments align with your values. 48 Financial, they're here to worry about your money, my friends, so that you do not have to. All right, let's start here. FBI disrupts alleged explosive drone plot targeting White House UFC event, officials say. Signal chats allegedly revealed 23 people discussing pre-operational activity, written by Sophia Compton, Fox News, published earlier this morning. The FBI and its law enforcement, reading from the article here, law enforcement partners disrupted an alleged plot targeting this weekend's UFC Freedom 250 event in Washington, D.C., officials told Fox News Digital. 5 people were in custody as of Monday, and investigators identified 23 people. 23. That's almost 24. If you're a radical leftist who's tuned in here who has trouble with mathematics, that's just shy. I'm kidding. Just a little bit. Listen, I welcome you to listen to this program, no matter what your political background, political persuasion, worldview, religion. I used to say I didn't care what that was. I was trying to communicate it makes no difference to me where you're coming from. You're welcome to listen here. And that is true, but I do care where you're coming from. In fact, be advised, I got to say this, my legal team, my vast team of attorneys has told me I need to make this clearer at times throughout the program. There is a disclaimer at the beginning. If you listen to the program, you'll hear Glenn, who does our program intro. He says, caution, be advised, listening to this program may cause you to lean to the right. I occasionally do this on the program. I haven't for a while. I get going and talking about the issue of the moment. one of the many issues at the moment. And I neglect to tell you, if you are driving a vehicle down the road, you might notice, listening to this program on a radio station, you might notice your car is veering to the right. If you are operating heavy equipment, machinery, an excavator, a backhoe, a dozer, if you're operating something like that, be advised that listening may cause you to veer to the right. You got to pay attention out there when you're listening to this program on podcast, on radio. It makes no difference. If you're walking your dog listening to this podcast, be advised. Just be advised. You're going to find yourself trickling off the edge of the trail to the right. That's just the way that it works. I am legally required to tell you this. Legally required to make sure that you know this, that you understand this. And I just, listen, I want you to know what you're getting into here. You're going to find yourself leaning to the political right. This is a disclaimer. This is a warning of sorts. We are trying to achieve a certain outcome here, and that is to help anyone listening to this program hear and receive truth. That's what we try to do on this program each and every day, talking about the truths of constitutional conservatism, the truth ultimately of biblical authority. That's where the truth that was brought, that is embodied by Jesus Christ. That's what we're trying to do on this program. I'm not pretending that we're some unbiased news outfit, although I'll tell you that we present the news much fairer than the people on the left who act like they're media, who are trying to influence you, your decisions, your thinking, trying to move you to the left, all while telling you they're just giving you the news and the information of the day. Hogwash, my friends. These are professional deceivers. These are not journalists. In fact, journalism is a very, very rare thing today. We see very, very little journalism happening in the United States of America today. So that's where we're headed today. Well, I just wanted to give that disclaimer. Let's get back here to the article at hand. Let's read this article. 5 people were in custody as of Monday, and investigators identified 23 people as part of a potential network of plotters. The alleged plan involved using explosive-laden drones to hit buildings near the event, force a mass evacuation, and steer crowds toward a pre-staged sniper team, officials said. That sounds pretty deadly to me. A second wave again. This again is a planned terror attack, an attack at UFC Freedom 250 that was planned. A second wave was then allegedly planned to storm the White House gate, according to officials. The FBI first learned of the threat on June 10th and worked with partners to secure probable cause for an arrest in Cincinnati, where one suspect was taken into custody. Again, reading from this article at foxnews.com, where you can check this out for yourself as well, my friends. Investigators later uncovered signal chats in which multiple people allegedly discussed attacking the UFC event after, an initial review of one suspect's iPhone identified at least 23 Signal users discussing pre-operational activity, officials said. Some of those involved allegedly planned travel to Fredericksburg, Virginia on June 12th or 13th to prepare for the attack. One suspect allegedly told investigators the goal was to target capitalist elites, billionaires, or politicians who received donations from AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. The investigation stretched across at least 12 FBI field offices. FBI Director Kash Patel. Credited the FBI, the Department of Justice, and law enforcement partners with acting quickly across multiple states to prevent the alleged attack. Thanks to the rapid action of the FBI, our partners in the Department of Justice, and a multi-state operation, multiple individuals are now in custody and alleged planned attacks were stopped cold, Patel said in a statement to Fox News Digital. All right, so that's what we have going on. That's what happened here. Sorry, I've actually got to send a multitasking here. I'm the world's worst multitasker in the world. I am the world's worst multitasker, but I had to do something there really quickly. But that's what happened here over the weekend. That's what happened, alleged to have happened over the weekend. So we have this terror plot to strike at UFC Freedom 250. It's been disrupted. There's been investigation, or there's been arrests. This could have been, again, a bloody thing. And I find myself wondering if the people on the godless radical left would be cheering this morning. That's a fair question for me to ask. I mean, after all, when Charlie Kirk was brutally killed nearly a year ago, they celebrated that. They mock his death. Some of them reenact it. You've seen them do this. They think that they're clever. They think that they're witty. They think that they're profound. They think that they're making some sort of a statement that resonates with people. Maybe some of them are trying to simply enrage the other side. They're trying to stick people where it hurts. People who knew, some people who directly knew Charlie Kirk, others who might have followed him on social media, liked what he was doing. They want you to hurt, my friends. They want you to physically feel pain. They want you to agonize. And so they'll celebrate, they'll mock it. These are tactics straight. Hear me say this. I make no apologies for this. These are tactics that come straight from the pits of hell, where their father, the God of lies, the prince of this world, the evil one himself, Satan, sits upon the throne. That's on the thrones of their hearts, my friends, on the throne of their world. I'm talking specifically about the godless radical left. I'm not talking about every Democrat. I'm not talking about every person who disagrees with me politically. I'm talking about the ones who have identified themselves. And candidly, the people that some of us on the political right or center are afraid to properly brand. These people are the problem in America today. Celebrating the deaths of your political opponents for sharing ideas or for holding political office, for exercising political power when they have the ability to do so. These things are not healthy to a constitutional republic. They are damaging. They are deadly. They are inexcusable. They are absolutely wicked and evil. This is who the godless radical left is. The same people when President Trump, who was at the time candidate, President Trump, running to be the president a second term in 2024. That's been 2 years ago, by the way, when Trump was shot in the ear. They celebrated. Then when they realized he didn't die, they took to social media and they bemoaned the fact that the shooter didn't have enough practice. They couldn't believe that Trump turned his head at precisely the right moment so that he would only be struck in the ear and not in the head. These people are, listen, they can have their political opinions, but this has no place in a free society. This is what we are up against. This is who these losers and clowns and absolutely evil people, this is who they are. This is what they've become. I just find myself wondering how much they would have celebrated to see people attending UFC Freedom 250 slaughtered by explosive-laden drones, or who were shot in a second wave of an attack where they were directing people towards snipers. I wonder what the celebrations would have looked like this morning. And these people who believe these things, they believe that they hold the high moral ground. This, my friends, is absolutely inexcusable. This, my friends, is absolutely wicked. This, my friends, has no place in a free society. But instead of celebrating the terror attack that, thank goodness, didn't happen here, instead of celebrating what would have happened over the weekend, early this week and Sunday morning, or I guess Monday morning, because the event was Sunday night. Instead of doing that, they are instead upset and complaining about a UFC event held on the White House grounds. And that's what I want to talk about here next. Some of these criticisms, my friends, but this is a good place for me to take just a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a breather, and remind you that, friends, it's tough to live with discomfort. And prescription medications, they can often help, but those often come with a long list of side effects, not to mention the risk of dependency. That's why more people are exploring natural options like Kratom from Christopher's Organic Botanicals. This is a family-run company. They do things the right way. They work directly with Indonesian farmers, lab test every batch to make sure, my friends, that it is clean. There are no synthetics. There are no chemicals. There are no surprises. This is just natural Kratom that has been used for generations. Real Kratom, my friends, is properly handled. It's not synthetic. The problems come from the garbage that is synthetic blends and contaminated garbage. Christopher's Organic Botanicals, they keep it real, they keep it clean, they keep you, my friends, informed. You can start with their Kratom Starter Pack. Use code Todd Huff. You'll save 10% off your first purchase. Visit Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. That's Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Truth, tradition, transparency, my friends. All right, so here we go. Some of the main criticisms to what people are saying about the White House's Freedom 250 UFC event. The White House isn't a sports arena. They're upset about this. In fact, I saw one comment, of course, coming from the radical left, talking about Trump being a rapist, which, of course, he's never been convicted of that. He's never been charged with that. They're conflating things. They're talking about a civil case, which has a much different burden of proof. In fact, that case with, what's her name? Jean Carroll or whatever her name is. There's questions about that particular case as it is, but they like to hang on to that and to say that Trump was convicted of rape. It is an absolutely false statement, but yet they'll continue to parrot it either because they don't understand, they don't know, or they don't care, or some combination of that. But they say that Trump, of course, is a rapist, and he's hosting an event where people are acting like gladiators and comparing this to, back to ancient Rome, where gladiators who were often forced to fight against their wills and fight to the death is compared to UFC. You talk about a lack of an ability to make any sort of a proper parallel. That is not what this is. You know what UFC is? First of all, UFC is one of the only sport that is a man's sport anymore. Not the only one. It's one of the only ones. I'm going to go as far. Listen, I was a huge NFL football fan at one point. I love football. I played as a younger man. It was my sport. I was I felt like I was a linebacker trapped in the body of a small player. I loved to hit. I loved it. I lived for it. In fact, quick little story. I played at a small school in high school, and they wanted me to play quarterback. Now, I want to tell you, I was not a good quarterback. I was a decent athlete, so we ran the option. But as weird as this might sound to you, I did not take pleasure in that. I didn't really want to play quarterback. I did it reluctantly. That may sound crazy and absurd, but that's the truth. And so I played both ways. In fact, I kind of made it known that if I can't play defense, I really don't have an interest in football. I don't have an interest in going out there and not hitting anybody. And that's really not the job of a quarterback in the NFL. And I've got no fault if people like to play the position. I couldn't throw the ball like obviously some of the greats do, but even a good high school quarterback was a better passer than me. But running the option, that was more my speed. And yes, it was more physical, and I liked it a little bit, but my life, I lit up when I could collide with somebody at full speed. I lived for this. I played basketball. I played basketball in high school much the same way. And I played a little bit in college football as well, defense. But I love that aspect of it. I love the physicality of football. But friends, that sport has changed. The sport that I played, in fact, I'm thinking as I'm talking with you, some of the things that happened with me on the football field back 30, close to 27, 30 some years ago. It's a different world. It's the game has changed. Let's just say that. And it's lost a lot of its, they've taken away, and they've made the game safer, but they've taken away some of the, what I would consider the real man's man football. They really have. They've taken some of that away. And some of it I understand and some of it I do not. And I will never understand. In fact, now football is marketed a lot of times to women. They're trying to get more viewers. That's the way that this works, more fans of the sport. And so in order to do that, you have to make some changes sometimes. And that's unfortunately what my beloved football has become. But UFC is not that way. UFC is a man's sport. And I've noticed, and this isn't spoken to a person, but if you're on the political left, and to say you're a man's man and a liberal or an extreme radical leftist, I don't know any of those people. To be a man's man and a conservative goes hand in hand. And so this is a sport that is attractive to people who are traditional, people who believe in traditional masculinity. I have no problem with the sport. It's not two gladiators being forced to fight to the death in the Coliseum. These are two men who have agreed, who want to, who, just like I loved playing football, these guys love combat sports. They go out there, they train, they live for this. This makes them feel alive. I don't know, there's not an old book, but an older book written by a guy named John Eldridge, and the name of the book is escaping me at the moment. It just popped into my head. But he wrote about, he tried to explain the men a little bit. He was a counselor and so forth. And he talked about being in a storm on a sailboat. And he said while it was terrifying, he was out at sea, I think, between Florida and the Bahamas, I believe. And he said it was terrifying, but at the same time, dealing with that, he never felt more alive. And there is something about this, as I got to take a break here, I looked at the clock. But anyway, there is something that makes these competitors feel no more alive than when they're in that octagon. I got to take a break though, my friend. Sit tight, back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Talking here about UFC Freedom 250 at the White House, talking about some of the objections that I heard to this event being actually taking place. I have to tell you, I watched the event. I told you yesterday that I had watched the event Sunday night. I know that there's people who hate UFC, and that's fine. You don't have to like UFC. That's not even my point. I'm not calling someone's manhood into question because they don't like UFC. I might have questions about their level of masculinity if they are against UFC because of certain reasons, if because of what the sport is, if they misunderstand it, if they think that it's barbaric. This is in part what it means to be a man. A job of a man, society is turned on its head, my friends. The amount of things that we have completely backwards is remarkable to me in this society today. The job of a man is to provide and to protect. And you can get upset about that. You can cry about that. You can try to change it. Listen, I understand people are different individually. This is where the whole gender movement misunderstands everything. Well, they want to redefine what classifications are, what part of God's order is, in order to say, well, I'm an individual. Yeah, you can be an individual And you may have, masculinity means a certain thing and femininity means a certain thing. And you categorize these traits into, move some of them into more masculine traits, move some of those into more effeminate traits. And then you can say issue by issue that some people, test along a spectrum. But the truth is, if you put all those answers into a box and shake it up, everybody's sheet of paper, they answered where they fall on the spectrum. You should be able to, if you have 50 things that are masculine and 50 things that are feminine or effeminate, you should be able to see someone's test results and see, as you look at all those answers, that the person who filled this out is a man. Maybe he's not super like on the high end of masculine, but you can clearly see he's masculine. I don't need uniformity. There are differences and so forth. I'm not saying the only way to be a man is to step into the UFC octagon. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that a man's job is to provide and to protect. And there's a time. I teach my son this. I don't want you to go out there, son, and start fights with people, but there is a time. There's a time that you might have to. I hope you don't. I hope that you don't have to step in. There's examples that the men I know have stories of times when they may have had to step in or to say something. I've shared on this program, I was in Washington, D.C. several years ago with my son, with my brother and my sister-in-law. We were walking to have dinner. We were not far from the White House. We were going to, I think, a little pizza place, if memory serves me right. But nonetheless, we were going to have dinner. And I encounter a guy and a girl on the street, and she's trying to get away from him. She's younger. They're younger. And she's walking, and he's cutting her off and kind of grabbing her. And so she zigzags the other direction. He cuts her off. And I'm watching this from a distance. And there's people all over the street, not on the sidewalks, walking. It's dinner time. I mean, it's people are getting off of work or whatever it is. We're there for just a little for personal reasons and so forth. But I'm watching this happen. And I tell my son, I said, hey, buddy, just your dad can't stand back and watch this. Like, I'm going to go confront this dude. And so I walk over there. This went on for a minute. She was clearly upset. And I wouldn't say he crossed the line ever, but he was right up to it. He was touching her. He was impeding her progress, but he wasn't being violent. He wasn't grabbing her hard. He wasn't shoving her. He was just blocking her, and she clearly wanted away. So I walked right over to him, and I looked at the girl, and I said, and I put my finger right at that guy, and I said, is he bothering you? And she looked at me and didn't say anything. In hindsight, I don't know if she didn't understand English and I'm not trying to be truly, I don't know if she didn't know English or if she just didn't know what to say. And so the guy starts butting in and he's saying things like, oh, this is my girlfriend. I said, listen, buddy, I'm not talking to you. I'm asking her. And I said, is he bothering you? And she looks at me and looks back at him, kind of back and forth. You can see that she has this bit of shock on her face. And then he starts telling me, this is my girlfriend. We just had a fight. I said, it doesn't look like your girlfriend to me. I'm not asking you. I'm asking her, is he bothering you? And she just walked away. So we've all got those stories, or many of the men I know have stories like that where you stepped in. Sometimes it wasn't even received. Sometimes they didn't want, as in that case. She didn't want my help or didn't know what to do with it. Maybe she was afraid if she took my help that it would cause I have no idea, cause a bigger problem for her. But that's part of what it means to be a man. And it is amazing to me that is offensive to people. It's offensive to people. And so UFC is obviously going to be offensive because you got two guys in there that are trying to break the other guy's face, right? But you willingly get in there. I briefly did a little bit of training with guys that did this, or with a guy who trained not at the UFC level but fought locally, and they enjoy doing this. And it's not the same thing, but people are upset that this happens at the White House, and I ask why. Why is that so upsetting? I understand there's other objections they have to this, that maybe I'm a little bit more understanding to. But the idea that this is barbaric, and then people, I love the people who said that then, the attacking the Christian conservative who has no problem with this, saying you've got a rapist. I've seen these posts on social media accusing Trump of being a rapist. You've got a rapist who's running an event that looks like, throwing two gladiators in to fight to the death. Tell me you don't know anything about UFC without telling me you don't know about UFC. And then, they have that perspective, and they say on top of that, it's on the Sabbath. Well, newsflash, dude. Sunday is not the Sabbath. Now, I know many Christians will celebrate Sunday as though it is the Sabbath, but it's not the Sabbath. The Sabbath is Saturday. That's literally what it is. Some people say that the Sabbath should be transferred to Sunday, because that is the Lord's Day. Sunday is the day that Jesus rose, Resurrection Sunday. That's the day that the early church met. That's the day that most churches today meet. Some people still adhere to to Saturday being the Sabbath. Other folks, the Apostle Paul writes, I don't want to make this a sermon or a Bible study here, but Paul says, to some people, no, all days are the same, and we shouldn't be judging, seeming to indicate that we know Jesus became our ultimate rest. So the Sabbath, some Christians today will say the Sabbath doesn't apply because Jesus is our eternal rest, and with his death and resurrection, we now have infinite rest, eternal rest with him. So there's different opinions, but the fact of the matter is Saturday is the Sabbath, not Sunday. That's just simply false. Some people are upset at Trump no matter what he does, my friends. No matter what he does. That's an obvious, that's a given here. But did you know, would it change your opinion to know that Teddy Roosevelt used to host, now it wasn't a quote-unquote spectacle, meaning it wasn't designed to be a sport that fans attended, but Teddy Roosevelt used to when he was president, and I know if I've got a leftist tuned in here today, we did have a president named Teddy Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, in fact. You might know the name. Listen, I'm just having a little bit of fun, but it's true. I've seen the man on the street interviews, folks. I know how these people vote, and it's certainly not for constitutional conservatism or for a belief, an ideology that has to be explained to them. They think that we fought for our independence from Belgium in 1914. But anyway, Teddy Roosevelt used to host boxing at the White House. Again, it was for sessions, it was for sparring, but imagine that. Imagine if Trump got in the octagon. Oh, can you imagine these people on the left? How upset they would be then? Oh, I got to tell you, it entertains me to no ends. Friends, ever notice how some families seem to have a plan that lasts for generations? That's not by accident. Full Suite Wealth works with people who want their wealth to make a difference for years to come. Their team brings together high-level investment strategies like private equity, private credit, and option strategies. All those things coupled with expert legal advice. It's about making sure your vision becomes a reality for the people you love today and tomorrow. If you're looking to do more than just manage money, if you want to leave your mark and build something lasting, take a look at Full Suite Wealth. Jason and his team will take great care of you. Again, that website is fullsuitewealth.com. Build your legacy, my friends. Secure your future. Time out for me. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Third final segment of today's program. Again, if you want to share your thoughts and opinions, I welcome you. You can do that here below. If you're watching these clips on social media, you can comment below. You can also text me 317-785-1030, 317-785-1030, or email Todd at toddhuffshow.com. Folks, let's face it, every dollar we spend is a vote for the kind of America that we want to live in. That's why we launched Freedom Marketplace. It is a directory of businesses that's free to you, my friends, to take a look at, to browse, to shop. These businesses align with your values. They've made a promise. They will not support leftist candidates or leftist causes. And if they break that promise, poof, we kick them right out, my friends, of Freedom Marketplace. Haven't had to do that. Don't want to do that. We screen people pretty well on the front side, so not a major concern, but it is something that we would do. It's part of the agreement. So if you're tired of funding the woke agenda, if you're tired of giving money to the clowns who are freaking out about UFC Freedom 250, then check out freedommarketplace.net. Again, freedommarketplace.net. It's free, it's easy. And my friends, if I dare say so myself, it's the right thing to do. Liberty in business for all, freedommarketplace.net. All right, so wrapping up here, let's get some other criticisms out about this UFC Freedom 250 being held at the White House. I shared with you off the top that there was a terror plot that was stopped by the FBI. And of course, I raised the question, if that terror plot had actually happened, would the left be celebrating today that Trump and supporters of Trump and UFC fans would have been injured, maimed, and murdered? I think that history is the best, looking at history is the best way to determine how people would behave in the future. And I think the answer to that is a resounding yes. It's unfortunate, but this is what we are up against, my friends. It's hard to believe because I know you don't think like this, but I'm telling you, from what I've heard from my clips, things on social media, I can, if we're in agreement and you took to social media to share your beliefs, they would absolutely want to see you hurt as well. This is where we've gotten. This is not fun and games anymore. The stakes are high. I still find it mildly entertaining because these clowns wouldn't even think about settling the beef in the octagon with somebody. They would criticize it, but they would certainly celebrate the deaths of those fans. I'm talking specifically about the godless radical left. I'm not talking about most Democrats. I'm not talking about most liberals. I'm talking about those who have decided that they are justified in killing and harming physically those who disagree with their worldview, their morally bankrupt and absolutely despicable worldview. They think that they are justified in harming those folks. Make no mistake about it. Some people criticize that this UFC Freedom 250 turned the presidency into entertainment. They compared it to reality television. They called it a spectacle, a circus. And then some people said that this is entertainment mixed with governance, which, again, it was entertainment. There's no governance happening. By the way, these are the same clowns who live in a metaphorical bed. They're sleeping with people in entertainment to push their own radical left worldview on the people. On the American people. Some people said that this is just a Trump event. This was more about Trump than America. This was supposed to be celebrating America's 250th birthday. And by the way, if you watch the event, Trump was certainly sitting there. And there were, Trump came out of the White House with Dana White. But that's what all the fighters did. This event was not about, I know that Trump's name was on it. He was proud of it. He was going to be a central figure. But this event, if you watched it, if you understand the sport, was not about Trump. Now, the fighters, when they would win, would go up to Trump. He would shake their hand. A lot of them, you could tell, just wanted to share their appreciation or whatever and talk with President Trump. He was certainly central to this event. He's never just a wallflower, my friends. But to say this was just about Trump is a criticism that, candidly, is just not true. Now, I do want to mention, were these folks upset by some of the things that happened in the White House under Biden? In 2024, Easter Sunday coincided with the Transgender Day of Visibility. And guess which one of those things the White House chose to celebrate? Well, you know which one it is, my friends. There was also another event in 2023. I had this in my notes, but I just can't find it quickly here, but there was another event. I just want to get it right. In 2023, where there were all sorts of activists, here it is, drag performers and LGBTQ events at the White House. That was certainly a thing. In 2023, the White House had a Pride event. During a Pride event celebration on the South Lawn, same place that this UFC Freedom 250 was held, a transgender activist, Rose Montoya, and others were filmed exposing their chests. So these same people have no problem with that sort of behavior, those shenanigans happening. Those videos spread widely online and generated significant backlash. The White House later called the behavior simply unacceptable and inappropriate and disrespectful. But of course, they did nothing to stop it. And of course, they created the environment in which this stuff took place. But music's telling me it's time to wrap up, my friends. I gotta go. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, SDG.